Let's bring in Andrew Brandt, the Monday morning quarterback columnist, former front office executive. Let me ask you that question. I'll start with that, Andrew. What's the position that you wouldn't want to, knowing what you get paid and the prestige that goes along with it, what's the worst position in the NFL?
Yeah, good morning, Dan. And I think it's got to be the business approach, which is my expertise, and it's got to be running back. It's the shortest shelf life in the NFL. They're the most disadvantaged by this college eligibility rule of 3 years in college before you can come out, because their prime earning years are when they're in college. And of course, their first contract, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And by the time they get to the second contract, a lot of teams are like, yeah, they're kind of washed up and we can get one in the low rounds. And the only guys paid really now are McCaffrey and Bell on the franchise tag last year. It's like, yeah, it's a bad position if you're talking about the business of football.
And I said at the time, look, if Carolina needs to have somebody you want to come out and watch, then pay Christian McCaffrey. You're not going anywhere with that team for the next couple of years. Dallas invested in Zeke Elliott, and then they gave him the contract extension, which I wouldn't have done. But Jerry believes in, hey, we have a good running attack. I don't know what the Giants are going to do with Saquon Barkley at that position. Handicap that down the road. Where we are with the NFL with these running backs, first of all, is a running back going to be taken in the top 10 anytime soon? And are you going to extend these running backs that you take in the first round?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from a personnel standpoint, there's always those outliers like Elliott, like Barkley, like McCaffrey, that are going to be top 10 picks, maybe one every 2 years. I mean, I think that's where we're really talking about. But on the pay scale, listen, I hear about the outliers, Frank Gore, Emmitt Smith, Curtis Martin, but that's what they are. They're outliers, and we got a league that doesn't like to admit it. But people in my former position are all into analytics right now, all into modeling and statistical analysis and quants and Harvard PhDs in the back of the offices. And they're telling them, don't pay running backs. I mean, just don't pay them. When you talk about allocation of resources, the positions, quarterback, pass rusher, left tackle. But at the bottom of that is running back. And that's my answer. That's the bottom position. So there are going to be some tough decisions. You got a guy like Aaron Jones who had a great year for the Packers. You see my helmet.
Yeah.
What they do, they draft a running back in the second round. So this is happening all over the league.
Well, if you could have Christian McCaffrey or Jamaal Adams, who would you want? Let's say pay is the same.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to contradict what I just said. He's truly special. I think there's a guy who's truly special, but in McCaffrey, but there's so few of them. And segueing, you're right, Dan. Safety's kind of back there on the list too. Safety, linebacker. These are the positions that traditionally don't get paid. Now, I know what Adams is saying, what his agent's going to say. They're special. They're the McCaffrey and Elliott's of that world. But again, teams are looking at it and say, okay, where are my resources? Quarterback, they're going to have to pay Darnold in a couple year. And then pass rusher, and then, of course, left tackle and the offensive line. And you've got a GM there whose history is pay the trenches, as he did in Philadelphia, pay the trenches. The Lane Johnsons, the Fletcher Coxes, and then from there, look outside.
The situation with Jamaal Adams, where he is, he wants to get a new contract here. But does he have any options here? Does he have any leverage?
I mean, the short answer is no. I think some teams are a little more, it's a hard word, like cowed by this kind of thing. But I think in recent years, less and less teams. I mean, I think back to the Jets years ago that were cowed by the civil disobedience of Darrelle Revis and responded. But I don't think there's much going around right now that has that. And as I tweeted this morning, Adams has no leverage contractually. He did a 5-year rookie contract. Well, it's 4 years plus an option. And as we know, there are tags beyond that. So right now, the Jets have 2 years of contract control plus any tags. And how do you have leverage there? I mean, how do you have leverage? And as you indicated before the break, if he tries to extend this to take it to another level with a holdout, oh my God. I mean, the CBA already rolled back rookie contracts and the kind of contract control teams have, but now they added penalties severe for holdouts.
We're talking to Andrew Brandt, the Monday morning quarterback columnist, former front office executive. If Jamaal Adams called you for advice today, what would you tell him?
Is there a way to have reasonable contract negotiations now rather than play on this contract for 2 years? Because I think once you get to trade demands, then you're not talking. Then it's kind of like baseball. Then you're just kind of in the corners.
Yeah.
Can we get to a contract and not have him sit for 2 years waiting for that to happen? Now, Jamaal Adams, I would be the agent. I would understand you'd have to take below market because you're 2 years away. Whatever the top of the free agent safety market is, they were free agents. They didn't have 2 years left. So you got to balance that versus his talent versus whoever those players are.
What are the Cowboys waiting for with Dak Prescott, or what is Dak Prescott waiting for?
I'm going to take a different view here. I said this on your show before. Dak Prescott not only has leverage, but his leverage increases if he waits. Now, can he wait? Because if he waits, then there's a second tag, and do they really want to do that? And then he's negotiating with extreme leverage. But maybe that's the play that CAA is using with the Cowboys. Like, we want to really knock it out of the park. Home run. And if you don't want to do a home run, Cowboys, we'll wait. It's kind of that simple. And, I think Mahomes, I think Chiefs are going to throw a ton of money at him. And he can say, great, or he can say, I'll wait, and my leverage will only go up. And so with Prescott, people can mock $40 million a year, whatever he wants, but why not? What's his downside? Play for 25 this year? Okay.
The business of bringing in Colin Kaepernick. We know the political aspect of this, but the business side of this, tell me why you would or wouldn't bring in Kaepernick if you were running a team.
Well, I wouldn't, because it just seems so reactionary. You haven't done it for 4 years. No one's been eager to do it before. You talk about Goodell encouraging teams to sign. I mean, if I'm an owner, I'd encourage Goodell to stay out of our
I was
business.
going to say, what does that mean, that the commissioner's encouraging owners to do this? I mean, they probably look at Roger and say, Roger, shut up. We run this league.
And no one has, quote unquote, endorsed his statement, which is another issue in itself about protests. But I just think if Kaepernick, the other issue with Kaepernick that's been there all along, Dan, is backup players. I've been there, front office. You don't want backup players getting a lot of attention, frankly.
Yeah.
If you got a star quarterback, it's a lot of attention off the field, fine. But a backup player, and obviously he's going to be a backup. He hasn't played in 3 years. And what team is going to say, forget all the politics? Well, this guy, what player in the league right now is coming off 3 years of inactivity? Zero.
We had Dr. Fauci on yesterday, and he has talked about maybe the NFL needs a bubble like the NBA. Your thoughts on the bubble for the NFL?
Well, it's interesting because we've seen comments from Dr. Sills of the NFL and Dr. Mayer of the NFLPA. And the translation, Dan, of those comments is, thanks, Doc. We'll handle it. Because they don't want to go in the bubble. They don't want to put 53 plus 20 coaches plus 50 staff in a bubble. Now they do a bubble on Saturday night and Sunday before the game but no. I mean, listen, this is a big issue because we've been here 10 years with concussions. What's the stated priority of the NFL? Health and safety of our players. Now, here's the reality. If that's true, they wouldn't play. Right?
Yeah.
If that's their number one priority,
yeah,
they wouldn't play. But it's not true, because the business of sports, because the economics say you really have to play. And you have to play, and whatever modifications you have to do. But if you start drilling down, here's the problem. You got 150 pages about social distancing and not spitting or sneezing or locker room six. But it's football. How do you practice and play football among these protocols? That's the needle that they're trying to thread here. You can do all you want with 115 pages of protocols, but I don't know if any of them go into playing the game, practicing, which is the opposite of social distancing. It's, bodily contact and sweat and droplets everywhere. So I don't know how you solve that.
Yeah, I saw where Sean McVeigh was basically saying that. He goes, I don't know how you can be safe, but then play football. John Harbaugh said, I just don't know how this is possible here. And I
Well,
wonder.
John Harbaugh's talking about the protocols, which is great. I mean, listen, you got to do it. Sorry, John, it's impossible to live like that, but you got to. But the McVeigh thing is more realistic. It's like, what about playing?
I know.
And when you have a coach saying that, that's an issue. So listen, the NFL has been extremely fortunate. They can watch basketball, they can watch hockey, they can watch, if baseball comes back, they can watch MLS. How they do with testing and treatment and tracing. What did they do? What's best practices for isolating and quarantine? They're so lucky because of the timing. But then you get to the fundamental question of, can they actually play this game where the virus is going to be in 3 months? They're hoping it's much less than it is now, but that hope is not a plan.
Good to talk to you, Andrew. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Dan.
That's Andrew Brandt, Monday morning quarterback columnist.